perspective oftentimes is based on experience, right? It's based on your own personal experience, it's based on your own personal knowledge.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation and the latest in our monthly series, PM Talks. In this episode, I sit down with Patrick Roan to discuss the importance of perspective in our daily lives. Another really fun conversation right out of the gate, though it doesn't sound like Patrick's too thrilled to be there. We're going to get into that as well. We also dive into kind of our personal experiences with escaping the daily grind, the joys and challenges of investing in vacation homes, and the unique significance of family cabins. Patrick goes into a story about that. So let's get into it. Another in one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast is having this conversation with Patrick on a regular basis. So here's another one about perspective. Enjoy. Your enthusiasm towards the hitting of the record buttons was palpable, to say the least, my friend. Yay.
Oh, no, seriously. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
You go, Mike. How you doing? How's things going?
Woo.
Crazy
Crazy
town?
Kind of crazy town right now. I've got a very packed schedule. So does Beatrix, so does my wife, and we're going to go up to the cabin tonight, our family cabin, after all of that schedule is done. So, in other words, in the midst of everything else that's going on, we're also like packing bags and getting stuff ready, and we'll pack the car up and pretty much as soon as our various days schedules are done, we're going to hop in the car and drive for 2 hours. So yeah, it's nuts.
Well, but the great thing is that, and I just finished talking to somebody about this, is the idea of you're getting a bit of a holiday, a bit of a vacation, right? Like, is it just for the weekend?
A little bit.
It's for the weekend, right? But still.
It's just for the weekend. We actually, there's several important things happening on Sunday that we have to be back in town for. So, I mean, it's even really not for the whole weekend as much as it is, we'll get there late tonight. We'll get it unpacked, go to bed, wake up the next morning looking at the lake, and we'll be there all day, go to sleep, wake up, pack the car, and drive back. I mean,
this reminds me of when I was a kid. It was like you work all week to go to we had a trailer. Like one of those in those trailer parks, but like a resort style trailer park. This is in Ontario. I remember exactly where it's called. It was in Milton, Ontario, and we would go there. But what we would do, and this is very much, I mean, and I don't know, I mean, from my experience talking to like people I was growing up with back in Southern Ontario, it was like you worked hard all week to go away to your cottage for the weekend. But the problem is, and again, I'll just use the term problem, is that you get there, you have to set things up, get things ready. Then you have a bit of time on, like, so you get up, let's say you go up Friday night. You have, you probably get up there, you're relaxing. Then Saturday you have to do like some tidying up and some housekeeping around the place. And then you finish the Saturday, and then Sunday you're busy getting ready so you can head back so your parents can go back to work the next, on the Monday. So realistically, your entire time at rest at this cottage or cabin or trailer, at least in my experience, was really about 24 hours in total. Like, because everything else was around like, and it was tense too. That was the other crazy thing. And again, this is probably unique to my experience, or at least more unique, is that there was tension around that. Like, oh, we got to get out there. We got to like, which is why my wife and I mean, other than financially, have been hesitant to like get let's go someplace where we can go away for the weekends, because my experience, and she had a cabin up in the Yukon as well. They still do. Their experience was different, but it was like a second house that you had to maintain. And it was like,
and there was stuff to do up there. And
yep, exactly. Yeah. So to me as a kid, it didn't feel like a vacation. It felt like, because of the tension and then all the stuff. So it's interesting.
It's just different chores.
Yeah. How do you make sure that doesn't happen for Beatrix then? Like, I mean,
so there are a number of traditions and rituals we have around the cabin. And so for her, I mean, that is part of it. The other part of it too is like we've done this enough now for long enough. This cabin, for what it's worth, and for the listeners, is in a small town on a lake called Osakis,
Mm-hmm.
in kind of central Minnesota. And the original part of the cabin, like the first, it's been added on to, but the very first
Right.
part of the cabin was actually built by hand, by law, with logs, by Bethany's great grandfather.
Wow. Yeah.
So, this has been in the family for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
It is highly special to everyone in the family, as far as I mean, it's just one of those places that everyone in Bethany's family has been to, has spent time at, has
Yeah.
grown up with, right?
Right.
And so the nice part about it in our case is, number one, um her mother's brother and his wife actually own it. So
Okay.
they're the ones that, pay. Well, there's no mortgage, but they
I
take care of the
understand. Yep.
utilities, whatever. If anything big goes wrong, they're the ones that call and they take care of it and that
Property
sort of thing. So
taxes, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that stuff, we don't have to worry about that. So that's one nice thing. Second nice thing is that because this is a shared cabin, it's shared work, right? A lot of,
Mm-hmm.
like, if the grass needs mowing, well, if you're up there and the grass needs mowing, you mow the grass, but that means that the next people who come next weekend may not have to mow,
Yep.
because
Yep.
and so everyone kind of takes part in the work. Thirdly, it also means that a lot of the prep is taken care of, right? There's certain things that you don't really have to worry about. The linens are already up there and washed and clean. It's, you have to bring your own water because the water out of the tap is directly from the lake. It's
Yeah.
filtered, but it's right out of the lake. It's not potable, so you got to do that. But the bottom line is this, and that is that we are blessed and fortunate in that a lot of the work is done, so we don't have that same sort of tension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have a lot of kind of ritual places that we go when we're up there, traditional sort of things that Beatrix really very much enjoys and has
Mm-hmm.
been doing literally since she was born. So,
Right.
I think for us, once we get up there, get unpacked, everything is mostly non-stressed, right? We
Right.
can kick back and read. We can go for a kayak. Beatrix is old enough now that she, and strong enough that she can just drag the kayak out by herself and
Throw in the life
draw
jacket and
blank
then get out.
back
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get out there, do her thing,
Yep.
and so we don't really have to worry about that anymore. It's not stressful to have to work hard for her to have fun. Being she's 16, she's relatively independent and can do her own thing for the most part. So it turns out, even though it's only going to be a day for us this time, it's nice. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll go up on a Saturday and
Yeah.
stay through and come back on Tuesday, which is nice because most people leave Sunday afternoon, and so it's really quiet and peaceful up there for a couple of
Yep.
days.
And you're avoiding traffic either way, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's less
exactly.
traffic coming back.
Oh
So
yeah.
this lends nicely into the idea of perspective, which is one of the things I want to talk to you about, because it depends on how you look at
Mm,
things, right? Like, I've been
sure.
thinking about, like, so for example, and this came to mind when I was, well, first off, the coffee mug I'm holding is from and I know people can't see it, but it's got 3 different handles on it. And it's from this company called Meow Wolf. And this is
Oh yeah,
their,
yeah, yeah.
you've heard of
Yeah.
Meow Wolf. They have Omega Mart in Las Vegas. They have Convergence
Yeah.
Station in Denver. This one is from their original location in Santa Fe, but I bought it in Vegas because they have, like, at every store that they have, every one of their attractions, you can get everything
Is a
from every
different
attraction.
store.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is from the Society of Peripheral Studies, and it's got 3 different mugs on it. Now, what's interesting is at
Or
first
handles,
glance,
3 different handles.
3
Yeah.
different handles, sorry. At first glance, they look like they're all pretty much the same, But
Yeah.
now that you're probably looking at it, Patrick, you can see that, oh, wait, there is one that's particularly wider. Like there's more
Yeah.
space between it. And that's for an obvious reason. It's so I can take a sip without having, like, it's taking that into account,
Ah,
right?
gotcha. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So depending on, the perspective of, most people go, that's a weird mug. I'm like, well, it is, but I also can grab it from any angle and not have to worry about it slipping out of my hands or whatever. And as a lefty,
Mm-hmm.
that's helpful. But I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
was also thinking about this in terms of the new Star Wars series started this week, The Acolyte. So when you're
The
listening to this,
Acolyte.
yeah.
Are
So
are we gonna do some spoilers here, Mike?
no,
I've
we're
only
not.
seen
Well,
the first episode, so.
I will only say that there is a scene where I'll leave it at this. There's a scene where something that was originated in the comics shows up in live action for the first time, and it's something that Jedi do, and you've never actually seen it in any. I don't even think we've seen it in animated before.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and it really, the reason that they do it for, initially it was done for one very specific reason. And again, I don't want to throw any spoilers out there, so if you're listening to this, like, you'll have to do the research on it once you see it, and by the time this episode comes out, I'll probably put it, like, just the name of it in the show notes. But you'll look at the show notes, you'll see what I'm talking about, and I'll tell you, later, Patrick, because you're going to watch it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there's two different. So when it was initially this thing that Jedi do, it was initially envisioned for this one particular act, like one particular reason that it existed. But then down the line, there was a second reason, which is a little less, let's say, ominous, that it was done for. I'll leave it at that. And it got me thinking about perspective, because what they're doing, I'm gonna probably take some time to do later this month. Just so, it's a really interesting phenomenon. Now everyone's gonna go want to watch and see what it is. But it takes place in episode 2. Let's put it this way: it takes place in episode 2.
Oh yeah. All
So
right.
so this idea of looking at things, like we were just talking about the cabin experience, through one lens, which is, oh my God, we're going to the cabin. There's tension, there's this, there's that. And then your story about how, there's shared responsibility, there's less like there's a little bit more of a
Yeah.
ease to it, as opposed to this
Yeah.
friction. And
Yeah.
the reason that perspective comes to mind in correlation to this Star Wars thing is that both like, perspective, I think, to me, is a
Mm.
way to reduce, or I wouldn't say eliminate, but reduce friction, or lessen lessen its power, right? Like lessen its ability to keep you from actually the purpose of what you're doing or what you're trying to do. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense, but and it also, um, perspective oftentimes uh, is based on experience, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's based on your own personal experience. It's based on your own personal knowledge. My perspective story that I'll add to this is, um, Cirque du Soleil is in town with
Mm.
their latest new touring production, which is called Bazaar.
Okay.
Um, and it's they set up the tent in a large enough space, and it's great. It's Cirque du Soleil, as it was meant to be. Blah blah blah. Um, and so we went to see it, the family, and
Mhm.
as listeners who have listened to this show, or even new listeners, may or may not know, my daughter is a circus performer. She has been taking circus classes with a large circus school here for since she was 2 years old. She does a number of acts, and of the 10 or so acts that are in Bazaar, my daughter does 8 of those.
Wow.
So, so after the show, well, during the show, we were kind of looking at each other with some of the things. And the reason for that is because, Cirque du Soleil, these are professionals, right? These are people that, like, they've probably been doing circus all their life. They're touring with Cirque du Soleil. They made it to, Cirque du Soleil is like, I don't know, it's the Rolling Stones of circus, right?
Yeah.
It's, you get what I'm saying, right?
Oh
It's the
yeah,
big
yeah. I've
time,
seen. I mean, and originated as a proud Canadian in Canada.
in Canada. That is correct. It's them darn French, I tell you, and the Quebecois.
Yes.
And so yeah. Uh, Here's the deal. It's really difficult for us to go to circus.
Right.
It's really difficult for us to watch circus because we have a different perspective. To the
Yeah.
average audience goer, everything that these folks did was amazing, was over the top. They've never seen it before. Out of the 8 acts, Beatrix can do 90% of those tricks.
Mm.
Beatrix, an amateur 16-year-old, can do 90% of it. Maybe in each act there was 1, maybe 2 tricks that she actually has yet to learn how
Right.
to do. But every one that we saw that she did, she could probably do between 80 and 90% of those tricks.
Well,
And so
really quickly,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
means that when she's watching this and seeing them do this, then she also has the understanding that if they can do those tricks, then the ones that she can't do yet, there's more confidence that she'll be able to do those because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, because it's less of a, oh my God, I mean, I've seen a bunch of Cirque du Soleil shows. I'm like, how are they doing? Like, to your point, like, this is amazing. But if you've got experience in it, you're like, oh, these people are almost, they're like peers to a degree, right? So it changes it. Yeah.
It
Sorry,
does. And I would say, even if she can't do them, she knows dozens of people that can, right? Like the juggling act, we're like, well, Vincent can do all of that and do it better. Or like, or the they have a what's called duo trapeze, which is
Okay.
2 performers, single trapeze hung statically, and they do tricks together off of this trapeze. Well, Beatrix does that same act with her partner Aiden, and I'm like, you could do that entire act. You could recreate that entire act with everything that you know. And she's like, yeah, I know. I don't understand what but also what it meant was, while it was, a perfectly fine Cirque du Soleil show, the truth of the matter is 2 things. Number one, because of our perspective, we were underwhelmed.
Right. Yeah.
And no one should be underwhelmed by a Cirque du Soleil show. But secondly, we've seen other Cirque du Soleil shows. We've seen lots of other Cirque du Soleil shows. We've seen things in Cirque du Soleil shows that there's no way she could do any of, right?
Right.
I mean, it really was high level professional stuff. I'm just telling you, for this particular show, from a circus perspective, this is not, trying to take anything away from people to go see it, because anyone else who sees this. So if you come to me and ask, how was it? I'm going to tell you, meh.
Yeah.
But if you went to see it, you'd be like, oh my God, that was great. Oh my, did you see how oh my God, And so
it also depends.
Which is right. There is no right.
There is no right. Because it also depends on, like, so for example, the last time I saw a Cirque show, when I was in Las Vegas last year, so 2023, one of the things I said to my wife I was going to go do, I was there for Podcast Movement Evolutions. There was a conference there. And I said, the one thing I want to do is I want to see Love. The Cirque du Soleil show Love.
Yeah.
Because I had not seen it.
Yeah.
By the way, this is before we even knew that it was going to be closing, because it's closing. As of this recording, it's done. It's done now. As of the time you hear this. And so I went to that show, and I know a lot of people, like, when you look at reviews, they're like, oh, go see Cog, go see this, go see that. Love
Mm-hmm.
is probably for a lot of like pure Cirque fans. Like it's not the most let's say overindulgent, like, look at all these
Mm-hmm.
tricks we're doing, because
Mm-hmm.
it's telling the story of the Beatles.
It's
There's a
telling a
framing
story.
device which is
Yeah.
unique to their stuff in this
Mm-hmm.
in this instance. I know there's a Michael Jackson show, I think, too, isn't there? And there's a few others, but
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
but I think that so not just the, like you said, the perspective of we've seen this, we know people that do this, you're not as blown away by it. If you do no two Cirque du Soleil shows will feel the same, because you could go see
Oh
Ka and
no.
be like, that was amazing. Go see Love, and like, well, and like, but if you're a Beatles fan, like I
Oh
am,
yeah.
you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, and the fact that I know that my favorite Beatle, George Harrison, was heavily involved in making it and all that stuff,
Yep.
like it
Yep.
colors your perspective around it, right?
Yeah. 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 For sure. And Love is a special one for us because Bethany knew the guy who, for the longest time, he moved on about a year and a half ago. But for the longest time, he played the priest.
Oh wow,
He was the priest in the show, Father, um,
Father O'Malley.
Father Father O'Malley. Thank
Yeah,
you. It was Father or something. Yeah, so he was Father O'Malley
yeah.
in the show. Big tall guy wearing the yeah.
I
And so yeah.
Yeah, I love that show. I
So
remember.
so
Yeah.
so but here's the other thing about that show, right? Once again, it's a matter of perspective, and it's not just your perspective as a Beatles fan or someone
Mm-hmm.
who is very familiar with Cirque and has gone and seen Ka and Mystere and is now showing up for this, and is maybe not as flashy from a you know Trick's perspective. Love is also one of those shows, like another Cirque show,
Mm-hmm.
where essentially the venue came to Cirque du Soleil and said,
Yeah.
we are going to give you an unlimited budget to create something really special for for us that is going to be the resident show for the
Ever.
next decade, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And literally, we're going to give you an unlimited budget. We're going to design the entire arena
Yep.
from the ground up for this.
Yes.
And Love is what you got, right? So even if you're not wowed by the circus aspects of it, by the tricks aspect of it, you're wowed by the technical aspect, by the fact that the speakers are in the seats and around you and set up in such a way that you actually they can play with the sound, and
Yes.
bounce it off of places
And the
in weird
screen and the
ways,
screens and stuff,
and the
right? Like, because they use
screens and
screens.
such.
Yep. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, and the wind effects.
Yes.
Every single seat has its own, basically, you know, atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can make the wind blow when the wind is blowing. They can
Yeah.
make you get what I'm saying, right?
I'm actually
It's
quite
insane.
surprised. I'm actually quite surprised, a bit of a sidebar, that they are canceling, that they have decided to cancel the show, considering that the Mirage is rebranding as the Hard Rock. Like, to me, it seems tailor made for the
I
Hard.
know, right?
I don't understand
Exactly.
it.
But
But to your point, the other thing is,
mm,
like you said, venue. Like travel, like Cirque traveling shows are going to be very different than,
yeah,
eh, we talked
because
about this,
they're in a
like,
tent.
yeah, and pro wrestling. We've talked about this when we've talked about pro wrestling in a
Yeah.
previous episode. Like going to see, like, like AEW would be the wrestling that has, like, they have it at Daly's place in Jacksonville.
Hmm.
Like that's where they
Hmm.
do it regularly. But then when they take it on the road for like these house shows, they're very different because they don't bring all the
Hmm.
stuff with them. Or you could go to like
Hmm.
some major event where they're doing a TV taping and it looks very different there. So again, your
Hmm.
perspective will shift based on the environmental implications of whatever's going on, right? And the environment doesn't have to
Hmm.
be necessarily like a physical place, but back to the whole cabin trailer scenario that I went through, the environment could just be the people you're with, right? Like
Sure.
it can
Yeah.
change the
Yeah.
the tenor of the entire experience, right?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, the difference of even the going back to Love as as an example, right? So uh seeing uh, uh, seeing Love knowing somebody who's in it,
Mm-hmm.
having gone, backstage, seeing how they put everything together, getting a tour of the, like, all of this before you see it and you understand what's going on is going to be completely different than walking in blind, having no real idea of what this is going to be and being blown away by the fact that, wow, that was really cool what they did with the screens and the sound and the wind and the this and the
Mm-hmm.
that, and the smells, because they can pump smells in too to that wind. It's insane.
It is.
But um, I mean, you're going to have a different perspective. So interesting that we talk about this because I just finished reading a book
Mm-hmm.
um, called Julia.
Okay.
Um, Julia is a novel that is based on George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, okay.
Now, George Orwell, 1984, we're kind of all familiar with the story, even if we've never read the novel. If you haven't read the novel, it's a classic. You should correct that toot sweet. It's probably one of the all-time, at least one of the top 10 classic novels of all time.
It's kind of like watching Idiocracy now and going, uh-oh, yeah, like, like how Idiocracy, the movie, has become a documentary.
Yeah.
If you read
Yeah,
1984,
exactly.
you're like, wait a minute.
Wait a second. Yeah, exactly. So, uh, an author, whose name is failing me right now,
We'll find it. We'll put in the show
decided,
notes.
thank you, decided to take the Julia character from that novel. Julia was Winston Smith's lover, the
Mhm.
protagonist's lover, ultimately who he gets caught with, and the reason he gets taken away is because of his relationship with Julia.
Yep.
Um, she's decided to take that character and write a novel telling her side of the story,
Mm-hmm.
which offers not only a very interesting female driven perspective to everything that's going on, not only fleshes out that character from just some girl, girlfriend of Winston Smith, who's kind of really a MacGuffin, a side character,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
it were,
Yep.
but almost gives her. But this novel gives her a fully fleshed out life with fully fleshed out motivations for everything that happens, and and while it doesn't retell the story, only in as much as there's only a certain portion of her life that intersected with Winston Smith's,
Sure.
right? And
Yep.
so that's the only point where it's even really intersects with the story we get in 1984,
Mhm.
um, or with a part of it. But you get what I'm saying, right?
Totally.
And so you walk away from this novel. I kid you not. I right before I got on this, I
You just
returned
finished
the
it?
book.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just finished it and returned it to the library.
Yeah.
Um, you walk away feeling like you now have a more complete version of that story,
Right.
right? It
Right.
fills in gaps and blanks that you otherwise may have thought of or didn't think of having until
Mhm.
now. It's like, oh, of course, okay, I get it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, and so, uh, all of that is to say that even there, 1984 is one of my favorite novels, right?
Mhm.
My dog is named Winston Smith. That tells you how much I love this book,
Which
right?
is crazy because with
Um,
a dog, you'd probably go with an Animal Farm character instead,
yeah, well,
typically.
you would think, yeah, exactly, but no, no, he just looked like a Winston to me, so,
Yeah.
um, and so, yeah, big, huge fan, but now I have a whole new perspective. A whole
Hmm.
new perspective about this novel and about this world and about its mechanizations and about who he was as a person and who she it was as, like, it's almost like, you work with somebody day in and day out, your coworker, and you go out for beers and your guys and your buds, right? But
Yep.
you don't know his children, you don't know his wife, you don't know what his home life is. One day he invites you over to dinner and you come over and you're like, "Oh, okay, now that I meet your wife and now that I meet your kids and I see where you live and everything else, now I know you
It,
so
it,
much better." And
it
it
adds the
makes
human,
it
it
makes our
adds more of a,
relationship.
yeah, it adds more of a
It
human element to it.
it broadens your perspective,
Exactly.
right?
So the first time this ever happened, it's funny you bring up the alternate perspective with that novel. I remember reading Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead,
Dead.
which
Yeah.
is by Tom Stoppard. It's a play
Mhm.
that it's
Mhm.
actually made. There's been a movie made about it with
Mhm.
Tim Roth and Gary Oldman. Fantastic film. Tom
Mhm. It's a
Stoppard's a great
really
writer. Really
yep,
good.
real
So
movie. Yeah.
so for those that don't know who Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are, they are perhaps
Mhm.
the most side characters you could ever have in a story because they are the messengers in Hamlet, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
they are like, but this story is told from their perspective because
Yes.
they kind of are just cast-offs in this. They're to your point, they're like MacGuffins to a degree inside of Hamlet. Like, well, we need
Mhm.
some way to convey
Mhm.
this, and then they just disappear. They are dead, like they are killed off, right? Like
Mhm.
they just
Mhm.
but to tell the story from their perspective, especially when if you see the movie, which I think that's a good gateway for you. You've got two amazing actors in Tim Roth and Gary
Mhm.
Oldman playing them, and this is from like the 90s. So that one, another one, Wicked. Wicked is
Oh,
being told
yeah.
from the
Yeah.
perspective
It
of
of the Wicked Witch of the West, right?
right, exactly. Which goes to show like who was really wicked was Glinda. I mean, if you've seen the
Yeah.
play, and I took one of my first
Yeah.
experiences with my daughter in theater was I took her to Vancouver to see Wicked, and we left. I mean, it was she was really young, so we didn't stay for the whole thing, but we stayed until the end of Defying Gravity, and then we left. I think it was during the
Mhm.
intermission. I think it was just like at that point. And
Mhm.
of course, there's a movie coming out. I think it might even be a
Mhm.
2-part movie. I don't know, but I mean, when to your point, it broadens your perspective because and it goes back to this whole idea of nuance, which we talked about in a previous episode,
Mhm.
right? Like it
Mhm.
adds nuance. It
Mhm.
adds, and then once you can
Mhm.
see these, once you broaden your perspective, it opens you up to things like compassion, empathy. The relationship
Mm.
between understanding and perspective is
Mhm.
massive to me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's not even a chicken or egg thing. It's very much a like it's almost like a rotational or what's it called? The phrases escape me, but they're symbiotic in a way. Like understanding and
Yeah.
perspective kind of go hand in hand. One
Yeah.
doesn't come before the other. They kind of work together. And why do we bring this up in a podcast that's called Productive Conversation? Because with perspective, just like with nuance, you
Mhm.
actually can make better choices around
Yeah.
things. You get
Yeah.
to see the bigger picture, right?
Yeah. And the other thing too is that it also then this also comes back to choices, which I talk about a lot, and how
And
everything's a choice
we've
or
talked
whatever,
about
right?
that in a previous episode too.
Right, exactly, right. But the thing is that you can make different decisions if you're able to broaden your perspective
Yes.
around a situation, right? If you are able to take a situation that might be emotional, might be something that you have a knee jerk reaction to, and take a step back and broaden your perspective about it and take a look at it from other sides, it will have the effect of allowing you to make more informed choices about how to react or how to act based upon that new perspective, that broadened perspective, right?
There's this quote from the gentleman who directed the documentary about Anthony Bourdain, Roadrunner. And the thing he said
Ah,
was about Bourdain loved to run into the gray, is what he said.
mm.
And I wonder if, I mean, this is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. We don't want to spend too much time.
Oh no.
But to me, Bourdain was like the guy who was always looking for different perspective. Like he was
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
the quest of like, I want to see everything from different, like I want to see it from all angles, as many angles as
yeah.
possible.
Yeah, of course. Well, and if you are not approaching the world that way, then you're not really engaging with the world,
Yeah.
right? The truth of the matter is that a large part of some of the us versus them mentality that we have in this world right now, and in my country especially, um, is centered around the inability to truly see another person's perspective,
Right.
to truly to see it, to understand it, maybe, at least. I
Or
mean, sometimes
no, to acknowledge it, I think. There's
to acknowledge it.
Patton Oswalt said this great thing. He tweeted this once,
Yeah.
which I loved. He goes, I don't have to respect your thoughts on something or your position on anything. And again, I'm butchering the tweet, but I'll find it. I don't have to respect it, but I do have to acknowledge it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. People will say, "Oh, well, you have to respect their opinion." No, I don't. I just have to acknowledge
No.
it. I don't need to
You
be
just
a
have to
jerk about.
acknowledge
I
it.
don't need to be a jerk about it either.
No.
That's
No.
where that's where I think the problems lies when we get too emotional about it. But acknowledgement versus like that acknowledgement comes before understanding too, right? Like
Well, sure, yeah, you have to acknowledge it, but I would say that then the next step is try to understand it. And I don't mean understand it from a empathetic way,
right.
right? Or even from a sympathetic way necessarily. I just mean in order for you to even begin to have an opportunity to engage with that person
Mhm.
around the why behind that perspective, and the only way that you might be able to get them to change it is to get to the why, right?
Yep.
The only way you can get to that why is by understanding, right?
Yep.
If you understand that, some person feels a certain way about this particular issue because they had something in their life that led them down that path, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Once again, don't have to have empathy, right? That doesn't excuse it, right?
No.
But but the only chance you have of saying, well, is by finding out what their why is, right?
Yep.
And then maybe at that point finding a way in with your more broadened perspective,
If
or at the
that's
very
yeah.
least broaden theirs.
So I think the thing that you say about getting to the why is one thing, but you can also maybe get to the how a little bit too, because I think
Mhm.
because you can figure out like, oh, how did they come to this stance? Because again, we talk about like that's part of the perspective conversation. I think
Sure.
is well, how do you get to see it that way? How do you get to experience it that way? How do like a good example back to the daughter conversation really quickly is, I can tell you that when my daughter went to Europe for 4 months, that was challenging for me, right? Like that's,
Mhm.
but I mean, I had confidence in that she knew what she was doing and she was with the right people and she was smart. And then when she came home, the, there was a change. There was clearly a change. You could see it, right?
Yeah.
Like I've, been gone. I've been out of the world on my own and I was able to handle what I needed to handle. And her perspective had definitely broadened because that's one of the ways that you can expand your perspective is by
Mhm.
traveling. But the other thing that happened, and it was very quick in succession, where she said, I want to really go to Southeast Asia at some point. I'm like, oh, yeah, we should all go. She goes, no, just want to go by myself. And I'm like, for that moment, and this is where I think where perspective can and many things can go to die or languish is if we don't take a moment, a pause, a beat to
Mhm.
really consider that, then that's where we can get into trouble, right? That's where we can have a response or we end up reacting instead of responding. And I think so now that Grace is going to Montreal because she's
Mm.
going to be going to, I mean, she's going to be gone for, I mean, that's the other side of Canada, right? Speaking of
Yeah.
Quebecois, like and
Yeah.
so I am prepared for that more because of that trip that was taken, as opposed to if this was the first. So again, my perspective shifted. What's hard, I think, for anyone listening to this, ourselves included, is again, we talk about time and all that stuff, is the space that we need to be able to appreciate someone else's perspective or even a different perspective, because we live in a world
Mhm.
that's it's about speed and go 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 and da, da, da. And if we just like, and it doesn't take much time or space to do it once you practice it enough. But once you are able to kind of give yourself that beat, and you have to, again, experience will teach you that, oh, I can take 30 seconds, I can take a minute, I can take 5 minutes, like, then that's when that openness that shows up. That's where all of the good stuff kind of can live.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there's the permissiveness for that to be held for you is
Yes.
hard unless you're willing to give yourself that. And no one's going to
Yes.
give it to you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it. You know, it's just so crucial in everything that we do. Um, Understanding and seeing the world,
Mm-hmm.
our world, the world at large, the world right in front of us, the things right in front of us,
Yeah.
um, will is essential to um, being able to navigate the world as it is, not how we wish it to be.
Yeah. Because again, how we wish it to be is only our perspective.
Well,
You know what I
hey,
mean? Like,
yeah. Well, it leads to so many other things. And one thing that we can talk about on a future show, that I've been
sure.
doing a lot of thinking around, is and this conversation has helped me, and I'll briefly give a preview and explain how. Is I've been thinking about when a project is done. How at what point is a project done? Right. I have a
Okay.
lot of projects that I'm doing. I have a lot of projects for the summer that, I've got things I've asked Beatrix to do, things my wife is doing. We have projects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when is that project done?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go
what?
ahead. Your microphone cut out for a second there. Go ahead. You were
Oh,
fine.
sorry.
Just, no, you were fine. Just,
Okay.
you made your point, and now go into the beginning of your next point.
I will say that a project, and when it's done, seems to be based on perspective.
Mm,
When I think a project is done, is obviously different than when others might think a project is done.
yeah.
And and while certainly there might not be a right behind that, you're able to live with certain points of doneness and other people are not. That's fine. That's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That we all need to come to agreement as to what that done point is before we enter into the project.
And that's what we'll talk about next time. We'll dive into that
All
next
right.
time. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll leave listeners with this. How do you like your steak done? Because that's a project. Everyone likes their steak done a little bit differently. That's a perspective thing. Speaking
Yep,
of
exactly.
speaking of perspective, you've got your book For You, which will be read
Yep.
differently by every single person because of their perspective. Uh,
Yep, exactly.
there it is. You just showed an image of it. Where can people keep up with what you're doing in the meantime, Patrick, and where can they pick up the book?
Actually, the best place to go is patrickrone.com, PatrickRone, like the Rhone River in France. Speaking of the French, once again. Um, uh, because that can lead you to all the other places, right?
Yeah.
That leads to my books, that leads you to my blog, that leads you to it's basically a big digital business card that tells you all the places you can get me.
Patrick, thanks again for having a productive conversation with me, then I'll see you next month.
All right, sounds great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Patrick for joining me once again for another episode in that special series. And we're going to see if it continues into 2025, but we're committed for the rest of 2024 as of this recording. So if you're listening to this as it dropped, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. You can get all of the show notes, relevant links, etc. at mikevardy.com/podcast535. That's one way to support the show. Check out the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the show notes directly from wherever you get your podcasts, be it YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But also, another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors that you heard during our conversation today. That's at mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors. Click on the link of any or all the sponsors that resonate with you. And that way you can support the show because they know that we sent you there. So any support you can offer to the show will be greatly appreciated. Ratings, reviews, they're also helpful because they help me make the show better. That's it for this episode of A Productive Conversation. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll be back next week with another regular episode. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.